Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Touchline Talk with Odds Changer and SBK. As usual, I'm joined by the one and only football writer, broadcaster and general man in the know. It's Dean Jones. How you, Dean? You all right?
I'm very good, mate. Yeah. There's a million rumours out there, aren't there, at the moment? So it's just a case of working my way through them at the moment, trying to find out what's real and what's not. I'm sure you're in the same boat.
Yeah, pretty much so. We're here to dissect those rumours and see what is the truth and maybe what is speculation. Let's start at Newcastle, the only place we can start, really. They've been the main focus of this transfer window. They're close to signing Diego Carlos from Sevilla. Well, I know Newcastle are confident that they might get this deal over the line. Maybe Spanish reports are suggesting maybe it's not as cut and dried as we think over here in the UK. Yeah. Obviously, the player wants to move. He's ready to hand in a transfer request. I think I've read something saying that his salary could be increased 3 times over if he ends up moving to Newcastle.
Yeah.
What's the latest take on Newcastle's pursuit of Diego Carlos?
Yeah, well, in Spain, you're right. There's optimism there that he might still sign a new contract at Sevilla. Obviously, Newcastle willing to blow them out the water financially. But in terms of where the two teams are competitively right now, there isn't much competition between the two. Newcastle stuck in a relegation zone. Yes, big ambitions for the future, but not sure which league they're going to be in yet. And Sevilla are currently in the middle of a challenge to try and win La Liga. And he's a big part of that. So they're trying to convince him, certainly not to leave at this moment in time, and perhaps even stay for the long term. But the player is obviously torn over what to do in this situation because it's the offer of big money, English football, and a huge project potentially about to begin. Or he stays, and there's a small chance that Sevilla actually can win the title if they can just make up some ground on Real Madrid. So it's not settled yet, but you're right. Like, Newcastle are confident, especially as the Sven Botman deal fell down. This guy has been on the agenda since very early on in their planning. So if this was to fall through as well, it would be a real setback for them. So I think that they will push the boat out to try and make it happen.
Yeah. Do you think he's the type of defender who's pretty much ideal for the Premier League? He's a big, strong boy, likes to make blocks and challenges. It's something that Newcastle really are missing in that defence at the minute.
Maybe, but from people I know that have seen more of him than I have, they also think he could be a bit of a liability in the Premier League, and that he might be a bit susceptible to give away penalties and perhaps even pick up red cards because of his style of play. So, I think he's obviously got amazing traits that are going to help Newcastle become a bit more stern. But at the same time, from what I've heard, there are a few concerns about whether his style might be a bit too much in the Premier League, especially if he's a bit too over-enthusiastic in those early games.
Oh yeah, Newcastle fans will love him if he's all action and everything else, getting stuck into tackles. But they're obviously trying to step up their interest now in a number of players, to try and get players over the line and to boost Eddie Howe's squad. It seems they've now made a firm inquiry for Jesse Lingard at Manchester United. We've spoken about Lingard countless times on this podcast about what his future holds. He's obviously in the last 6 months of his contract. We all thought he would end up at West Ham, if not this window, in the summer window on a free transfer. Do you think there's a realistic chance that he could go to Newcastle?
I think there's a small chance. I think we're going to get down to the wire in this window, and Jesse Lingard's obviously going to wait and see how things are looking for him. I mean, he's not going to make a permanent move right now because there's no point. But in terms of a loan, potentially if Newcastle are willing to pay all of his wages and stuff like that. And I still don't see why he would want to go and get involved in a relegation battle personally. And I think that if he was to go out on loan, West Ham would make a lot more sense. I'm sure they would match pretty much what Newcastle are willing to do financially too. David Moyes has had him as his number one target going into this window, irrelevant of whether they actually needed him or not. He knows he's such a good character and a good guy to really, have as a focal point of the team if they can get him through the door. And we've seen recently they do need more numbers. Obviously, West Ham really looking at loans right now anyway. They don't want to really spend any money in this window. So Newcastle won't have it all their own way if they are to get Jesse Lingard. Do you reckon he's got a chance?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility. If they stump the money up, Newcastle, Man United would obviously love to get a transfer fee or at least a decent loan fee for Lingard with his contract expiring. Like you, Dean, I'm not too sure Jesse Lingard would fancy a relegation scrap by going to Newcastle. And if he does see out his contract, he's going to have his pick of offers. I'm sure in the summer there'll be the likes of Tottenham, West Ham, maybe teams from abroad as well. So, yeah, big couple of weeks coming up for Jesse Lingard to decide what he wants to do. Stay at Man United, see out the contract, or go and get first team football and maybe try and get back into that England squad.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, it's a big year for him coming up, Jesse Lingard, and he can't really waste much more time than he has this year by staying at Man United. It's not going to work out for him. He knows that at this point. Um, I don't personally see the point in him staying at Man United till the end of the season. I hope to see a player like that go and find a challenge and rise to it.
Yeah, well, he did it last season at West Ham, had a brilliant loan spell there. So you would be hoping he would be up for that again in this transfer window. But yeah, we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks regards Jesse Lingard and his future. Sticking with Manchester United, Dean, Paul Pogba, now back to fitness after a spell out injured, could be available for Ralph Rangnick very soon now, back in the first team picture. But again, his future is a subject of speculation. We all know he's out of contract, still yet to agree a new deal at Old Trafford. Interesting comments from Ralph Rangnick the other day saying he doesn't, if he's back playing well, putting himself in the shop window for other clubs. What did you make of that?
Waste of time, isn't it? Really, I mean, what are you talking about? To be honest, like, what at this point in time, why is that the focus? I mean, the player's been there for so long now, and there's been so many ups and downs. It's been such a soap opera. Not really sure I see the point of bringing him back in at this point.
Yeah, should they be planning for life without Paul Pogba? We've got the constant links with Real Madrid, PSG, probably two of the only clubs that could afford the personal package that it will take to sign Paul Pogba in the summer. But you think United, if he's not signing this new deal, it's time to prepare for life without Paul Pogba and give others a chance in that midfield, players who want to play for Manchester United?
Absolutely, yeah. With Pogba, it's confused me for a while as to why Man United haven't been more proactive about finding him a new club, to be honest. Obviously not helped by the fact that he hasn't been fit enough to show anybody that he's worth investing in. But for Pogba himself, he was never, in my eyes, been likely to commit his future to United any further than he is now. I absolutely cannot believe that Man United would be willing to give him an improved deal. Doesn't make any financial sense. You're better off cutting your ties at this point, admitting that the club and the player just don't fit, and letting him go elsewhere, preferably abroad, so that he can't come back and haunt you too much, and let him carry on, and you kind of just write it off, and then reinvest his wage in a player that you want to be there. There are holes in that Man United midfield that need to be filled for next season, or really this season, to be honest, but it looks unlikely that they're going to get that done. We're hearing a lot of names linked in terms of midfielders, defensive midfielders, that wouldn't take the amount of money that Pogba's eating up from the wage bill, but would add a lot more to that team. So, look, Pogba's got a good personality. He is a great footballer. He's just not a fit for this Man United team for whatever reason. And sometimes it happens and you just have to accept it.
Yeah, it hasn't worked out for Paul Pogba after that record-breaking move at the time when he came back to United for a second time. It seems like both parties need to move on for the good of each other, that Pogba can move on and get his career back on track, and United can move on and try and rebuild the squad. Another player who's been mentioned, or who is seeking a move from Old Trafford this month, is Anthony Martial. Obviously, reports at the weekend came out that he refused to play against Aston Villa, which he obviously denied. Ralph Rangnick says they've cleared the air, but there's no way back for Martial at Man United, is there? He's got to be moving before the transfer window closes.
Has to, yeah. I mean, I think it was a misunderstanding between player and coach, but neither of them came out of it particularly well. It's all very confusing. I think that Martial is just extremely frustrated right now by the way that things have worked for him. He feared going into this January window that this would happen, that he would end up kind of stuck. And it is the case because he earns so much money, over £200,000 a week at Man United, that it is difficult to find a club to move to, particularly on loan. I mean, Sevilla, yeah, they have been in for him. As far as I understand it, they put a proposal forward and they would have covered about half of his wage. And Man United weren't willing to make up the rest of that wage payment. So Martial was left in kind of a predicament there, and you need to find a solution for yourself. If that's what they're willing to pay you, then you have to decide how this can move forward. And obviously, Martial, if they were to look for a different type of transfer, isn't going to accept that he's going to suddenly be worth half the amount of wages that he's been picking up at Man United. So I think that one's probably gone now. I think that's probably passed by. Juventus opening up. I mean, yeah. Juventus have always been admirers of Martial. He's been linked with them numerous times in the past couple of years. And I think with the injury to Chiesa, they need some new life in their attack. I guess a player like Martial has the motivation to go and prove a point. I think he would fit in well in that league. I think he could probably add something to Juve's front line that they don't have. And we all know that inside there somewhere, there is a good player with spark, with dynamism, who can finish. We haven't seen enough of it in recent times at Man United, but perhaps Juve can find that. I think at the moment that seems to be his best path out.
Yeah, it does seem like doors are maybe not opening up as much for Anthony Martial as he maybe expected when he went early in the window and thought, I want to leave Manchester United. Man United aren't going to make it easy for him, as you said, looking at a decent loan fee and obviously his wages to be covered as well. But yeah, let's see where Anthony Martial does end up. But I fully expect him to leave Old Trafford when the transfer window shuts on the 31st of January. Another player who's getting mentioned in this window with a possible move is Eden Hazard at Real Madrid. Still a mystery, this one for me, Dean, why this move hasn't worked out for Hazard. He went to Real Madrid from Chelsea in 2019 for big money. Everybody was expecting big things from the Belgian, maybe being the next Galactico at Real Madrid. But what does the future hold for Hazard? Newcastle have been mentioned, but supposedly the player doesn't really fancy that move. Is a return to the Premier League a real possibility?
Well, I mean, it's a possibility in the sense that there's barely anyone in any other league that could afford to take on Eden Hazard. I mean, that's the way to look at it right now. He moved to Real Madrid because they were a club that could fulfill his ambition in terms of, trophies and what they hoped to achieve, but also financially, they took him to a different level as well. Obviously, like, he's had so many injuries in his time there that would be layoffs of anything from like 8 to 10 days to like months. And it's been a variety of injuries as well. There's been muscle problems. He's had, I think he had like a crack in his foot at one point that left him out for a long time. He had a hamstring issue. There's been so many problems. And when you watch Eden Hazard play now, it's not the same player that Chelsea sold to Real Madrid. He doesn't have that same explosiveness. He's not as direct when he's attacking the penalty box. He doesn't have the confidence. He can't move as quickly with the ball. And so you're signing a totally different footballer right now. And obviously he's still got the talent, but I still think you're taking a big risk by signing him, particularly on big wages, because you don't know how many games you're going to get out of him. And you don't know how long it's going to take him to get to top form, because there hasn't really been a spell at Real Madrid where he's showed like consistent good form, because he hasn't had the opportunity to do that, because he's always suffering problems and setbacks, and whether it's even when he has been in form at times, the manager hasn't fancied him because he just can't find that form that made him one of the biggest players in the game. Yeah. I'm a bit concerned for him, to be honest, because looking at it right now, what Newcastle being linked with him, like, that's not very exciting, is it? If you're Eden Hazard, you really thought you were on the verge of becoming into that top bracket and perhaps even being compared to like Neymar and Messi and Ronaldo and Mbappe and all those guys, and he's just faded, hasn't he? He's faded, and I'm not really sure he's in a great situation right now to take a step even level with where he's at right now. I think he's going to have to be a step backwards for him.
Yeah, I can see a lot of parallels almost with what happened to Michael Owen. I know they're different type of players, but injuries caught up with Michael Owen. Wasn't the same player after all his hamstring injuries, had to adapt his game. And again, we never saw the best of Michael Owen in the latter stages of his career. Seems the same's happening to Hazard. Real Madrid would openly sell him, but the player obviously prefers to stay. He's on a lucrative contract there at the Bernabeu. 2.5 years left on his contract as well. It doesn't seem like there's going to be an easy way out from Hazard right now, for Real Madrid especially.
Yeah, mate, he's 31 years old. He's played 16 games this season for Real Madrid, or 16 appearances. I wouldn't say they've been full appearances, but no goals to show, and he's got 2 assists. I mean, that's not the Eden Hazard that we used to know. This is the guy that was a main creator. He was scoring goals. He was always at the verge of making stuff happen every time he got the ball. And sadly, we just haven't seen that. And I think his confidence is probably shot from recent times. So I hope we can see him find a club or a manager that knows how to get the best out of him again. I think he probably needs to go to a place where there's no pressure on him. ideally he'd go back to a club where he was loved in the first place. I don't know that he's going to go back to end up at Lille or Chelsea again, but it's a big time for Eden Hazard, and it's sad that, to say, at 31 we're talking about a decline of a player like this.
Yeah, we'd all love to see the old Eden Hazard return if that was possible. As on his day, he was a joy to watch during those glory days at Chelsea. But yeah, let's see what the future holds for Eden Hazard, because it doesn't look too good for him at Real Madrid right now. From one Premier League superstar to an ex-Premier League superstar as well, Luis Suarez, could he be in line for a shock return to England? Talk suggesting that Aston Villa are interested in offering Suarez a move back to the Premier League. Seems like Steven Gerrard's getting the old band back together, Dean. Coutinho's in the building. He's trying to get Suarez back in. Obviously, the two of them had a very close relationship during their time together in Liverpool. Suarez not had the best of times at Athletic Madrid this season. Hasn't seen eye to eye with Diego Simeone. He's out of contract in the summer, and it seemed inevitable that he will leave Madrid. Do you think there's any chance this move could happen for Villa?
I don't want to rule it out, because I wouldn't have thought Coutinho would have been joining Aston Villa. So, the Steven Gerrard appointment has changed everything in terms of the ambition that club can have. And on a short-term deal, it's not a bad signing at all. So there's definitely reason to believe it could happen. I'm not sure how much substance there actually is to it at this moment in time. But the fact it's being spoken about does make you wonder if something special might happen there. I mean, Aston Villa fans won't believe it if their team continues to shape up like this over Steven Gerrard's time at Villa Park. Then we're looking at a team of all-stars. But Luis Suarez, I think, could add something special to their season if they were to do it. I can definitely see the reasons why you'd feel he'd still had something to prove as well. I think Suarez having a last dig at the Premier League would be fun, and I definitely think he could come forward with some important goals at important times this season. But Gerrard would have to convince him of his place in the setup, because Villa are building this attack that was very young. They've invested a lot of money in it already. To bring in Luis Suarez, you don't want to upset those young players. You don't want them to feel like they don't fit into the future project. You want actually somebody like that to be used to motivate them, to show them that they're trying to raise the bar, to raise their games, to bring in almost a mentor to help them reach high levels as well. So it'll be interesting if they do go for it, how they sell it to the rest of the squad. But it'll be unbelievable. If Villa do this, then they are the winners of the transfer window.
Yeah, definitely showing great ambition, Villa, in the transfer window, as you said, bringing in Coutinho, also Luca Dean from Everton, which looks a really good signing as well. I'm just hearing that Daniel Sturridge is waiting by his phone, waiting for that call from Gerrard and Aston Villa to get the boys back together again and get that forward line of Coutinho, Sturridge and Suarez back together again. But he's also going to have lots of options, as you said, Dean, Luis Suarez. A lot of talk about a potential move to the MLS, which he seemingly does fancy at some point in his career.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And I know that there are opportunities there for him to go and do that. It's something he's been looking to explore for a couple of years now, when the time was right. I think the time is right, though, when there aren't clubs showing a big ambition and looking to include him in their projects. So I think he'll listen to anything any club in the top 5 leagues has got to say to him right now before he goes and takes that jump to MLS. Look, I know that Zlatan went to MLS and then came back, but it's not very often that happens. So let's see if he's got one more year in him in one of the big leagues and then goes off.
Yeah, if anyone can persuade him to move to Aston Villa, you would imagine it might be Steven Gerrard, who is making quite an impression already at Villa Park. Moving down to the Football League and the Championship, one name who's attracting a lot of interest right now is the Fulham midfielder Fabio Carvalho. Obviously, he's been in great form for free scoring Fulham lately. Fulham banging the goals in for fun right now in the Championship. Attracting Premier League interest, Dean, the likes of Liverpool, West Ham, Southampton, even teams from abroad all looking at Carvalho. Top young player, 19 years old, lots of potential, but he is out of contract in the summer and no sign of a new deal at Craven Cottage. What's your take on what's going to happen with Carvalho?
Yeah, disappointing from a Fulham point of view, because it's another young player that doesn't look like he's going to hang around, and there's been quite a bit of that in recent years at Fulham. but for whatever reason, he's not signing the contract that's been put in front of him. They have offered him pretty good terms, I have to say, but he hasn't signed it. Still showing good form for them, though. He's playing, and on Tuesday night scored another great goal for them. To be honest, all it's doing is convincing those bigger clubs that actually this guy is going to be worth investing in and taking a punt on for the future. Southampton have been heavily monitoring him in recent months and have been the front runners to sign him, from what I'm told. West Ham have had an eye on him too, but I don't think he's as much of a priority, and they're willing to wait. I think Liverpool are the club that at this stage would be most likely to turn his head. From what I've heard, like, that would appeal to him, and Eddie would, however far things might have gone with Southampton so far, and however confident they might be that they could try and sign him. Liverpool's different level, and I think that he is aware that right now he should really be keeping his options open and waiting to see how many clubs come forward. Like you say, there has been interest from abroad too. He's such a good player. This isn't someone that's like flash in a pan. He's going to be the real deal. He's so naturally gifted, but he also seems to have a very strong head, and I think he knows how far he can go in the game, and that's why he's kind of making sure that he doesn't rush into anything at this point. I can see an argument for him staying at Fulham, because I think being involved in this team and pushing for promotion and having a season in the Premier League next year and being a real big part of that team would really benefit him. And I think there are reasons for him to have a look at some of the players that have left Fulham in recent years and not really had much game time when they've made bigger moves. Patrick Roberts, Harvey Elliott, Ryan Sessegnon. There's been a few, but ultimately, it's hard to turn down. I understand that, and as I say, if Liverpool come in for you, then your head is turned. So we'll have to wait and see whether that concrete interest arrives.
Yeah, obviously Liverpool have history with Fulham as well. Snurring Harvey Elliott a couple of years ago, and getting him quite cheap as well with Fulham. Were demanded big money in compensation. It looks like it's going to be a similar story this time around. Whoever does get him, looks like it's going to be a tribunal, probably in a compensation package, which for Fulham probably won't get what they feel that Fabio Carvalho is worth.
They definitely won't. Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare in that sense, to be honest. And you have to wonder why these players keep walking away at such a key moment in their career. Look, fair play to Fulham. They usually have another one on the conveyor belt that comes through the following year, and the academy system they've got is great. But at some point, they need to try and hang on to some of these players so they could actually build for themselves. But yeah, losing him to a tribunal fee would be really disappointing.
Yeah, obviously Fulham, all focus right now is trying to win promotion back to the Premier League, and maybe that might give them an extra boost in their bid to persuade Carvalho to sign a new deal. But yeah, as you said, Dean looks a real top talent, and it's looking likely that we will see him in the Premier League next season. If not Fulham, probably one of the other teams in the Prem as well, with so much interest in his services right now. Right, that's us here for another week on Touchline Talk. We'll be back next week with the latest news and gossip as we approach near the end of the transfer window.